You are listening to Adulting with Ebony, a podcast for the awesome weirdos, creatives, seekers, healers, space holders, and personal development veterans who are ready to self-actualize and take their unique magic to the next level. This is for you if you identify as a spiritual being having a human, physical, and emotional experience and sometimes struggle to focus or know what to trust and what to tune out. I'm your host, Ebony Allard, aka Ebony Alchemy. I'm a neurodivergent modern mystic, author, artist, and facilitator. I'm an international award-winning master coach, certified in multiple brain integration technique and human design. I've been in the personal development, creativity, and entrepreneurship spaces all of my life, and I have special interest in the psycho-spiritual development of human beings that I share by helping you lead yourself to greater empowerment, embodiment, and full self-expression. Stick around to hear raw and real conversations about the reality of adulting, personal growth, self-actualization, and mysticism through the lens of curiosity as I ask, what part of being an adult do you think we all suck at? And what part of being a grown-ass adult are you in awe of? Hello. In this week's episode, I'm joined by Benedict Beaumont. Benedict is a breathwork facilitator, teacher, and founder of Breathing Space School of Breathwork. He's from Brighton in the UK, but he now lives in Canada with his wife and his young daughters. When not consciously breathing, he likes hiking, football, and general knowledge quizzes. Fun fact, Benedict and I went to the same high school at different times. We were not at the school at the same time and did not know each other in that time. And then I found him through a mutual friend on Facebook and discovered that we in fact grew up in the same city and went to the same high school. Fun. We have grown very fond of each other and really recognise the mastery and the skill that goes into the work that we both do in the world. And in this conversation, we are talking about what it takes to make good choices and how those choices might not always seem sensible or logical to others, but how they get to be to us. And we go through the process of talking about how we do that and what it is that we are really leaning into and tuning into when we're making good choices. We talk about parenting, both his experience of being a parent. I talk a little bit about my experience of being parented well. And I think that you're going to enjoy this episode because it is really an opportunity to tap into the awesome nature and the choice that is available to us as conscious adults. So without further ado, enjoy. Benedict, I am excited, and I say this every week, but nobody really understands that I only get the best people in the world on this podcast, and I am genuinely excited for the depth and the intimacy and the level of real and raw conversation that we get to have. And you and I always have those conversations, even if it's a year in between us speaking. So thank you so much for coming on and having a conversation about we don't even know what yet with me.
Ebony, it is a real, not only a pleasure, but an honour to come in and speak with you today. And I agree that we always have an astonishing conversation, not just if it's a year past, but even 5 minutes ago when we were chatting before we hit the record button. It is always a special moment that we have together. Thank you for inviting me on.
It's a pleasure, and I'm going to start by asking you, what are you in awe of about being an adult?
Okay. You know what? I would like to answer that with an activity. Okay. This is something that you and I have just done, but I'd like to do this on the recording as well. So I'm a breathwork facilitator and teacher, and my passion is showing people and sharing about breath. One of the things that I do before any interaction, pretty much, whether that's a workshop, a seminar, whether it's just having a chat with someone, is we stop and we pause and we take a breath. And so for everyone listening, I would love if you could just join along with us now. Maybe just place a hand on your heart or somewhere where you feel strong or safe. And let's just take a couple of breaths together. Thank you. Now I feel really present, really here, and able to respond fully. So you'd like me to share a little bit about what I am in awe of? Is that right?
About being an adult, yeah. Like, what is it about being an adult that is awesome?
My immediate response is going to say about having choice. And we have choice with every single breath we take, if we like, how we show up and how we do. At the moment, I am a parent to two very little children, and it's an astonishing lesson in so many different ways. But I am really struck by the fact that they have so little choice in their lives. They have to do what we say all the time. And I can really see them exercising their desire to be independent and to show up. But of course, they can't. They're not even able to make choices, but they still try. And as a parent, I really try and encourage that. So when they want me to sit in a particular chair, or they want to paint my nails or wear a hat or any of the crazy things that kids want you to, I always try and indulge that, because I remember myself when I was young, and that struggle for independence, that struggle to be my own person, and how frustrating it was that I couldn't be a person. As an adult, well, I think it was maybe as a teenager when I really felt I come into myself, and I was given more responsibility. You know, as a teenager, the way the world opened up to me when I could choose how I spent my time, about where I followed my dreams and my heart, was amazing. I was very fortunate. I had very supportive parents who were very understanding and who allowed me to be the person that I wanted to be, rather than put me into a pigeon box and, you know, give me advice and tell me I should do this, or shame me when I did something that they did not approve of. It has given me such a huge advantage into who I became. It opened up so many doors. It was hard. It was really hard, actually, because being given choice, being empowered, is also very scary. It's not easy. When you are, you know, given that choice, for many people, you know, don't take advantage of it. I'm also aware that many people feel that they may not have choice, that they are trapped. And I've felt that at times in my life as well, when I haven't had a choice, or maybe I've had to show up for a job that I hate, that I can't do, that I'm really stressed, or I'm stuck in a relationship that I feel that I could not get out of. But there is truly nothing in our lives that we do not have some kind of choice over. And for me, that ability to choose, I think, is the most awesome thing about being an adult.
Oh, there's so much juiciness in that. And there's a couple of reasons. So the first is, there was one thing that you said in your form before you came on that I wanted to pull up and ask you about. So I will do that in a second, and it relates and pertains to choice, which is very interesting. And the other is that piece that you said around choice, like it not being given that choice, being given that freedom, even though you're like desperate for it, sometimes can feel overwhelming. And I remember, so I also very fortunate to have a dad who has been on the podcast and is an incredible man, and who nourished, nurtured, encouraged, championed my voice, my choice, my freedom, and my ability to take responsibility for myself and my choices and my actions. And when I was a teenager and I wanted to go out and to stay out and to do all these things, when I was about to leave, or if I was going out, he would say to me, "What time are you going to be back?" And I would say, "What time do I have to be back?" And he would say, "That's not what I asked you. What time are you going to be back? If you think you're a grown-up, if you think you have the wherewithal and to go out and to be in charge of yourself, you can also tell me when you're going to be home." And I hated it. I really, like, for someone who'd been like, give me freedom, I hated it. I wanted something I could push back against, right? And so I would then be like, hang on, I would run out a step what time does everybody else have to be home? When's your curfew? And so they would all shout when their curfew was, and I would like give it like an extra 15 minutes and come back in and be like, I'm going to be back at, and then tell him the time. And his whole thing was he didn't mind, you know, when I was back, because he would rather not get into that game with me of me being late, him having to stay up, you know, the push, the proving, the, you know, all of that stuff. It's like, I'm going to go to bed. I'm going to live my life. I will set an alarm. I will get up. I will sit on the stairs. You will walk in the door at the time that you said you were going to come in, and then we can all go back to bed. And it was such a lesson that I still recount it now, right? But it feels really important, because at 7 I ran away from home because I wanted to be free and no one would give me enough choices. I wanted to go to the fair, and the dichotomy, that push-pull between give me boundaries, no, give me freedom, is something that very much is still alive in my life. And that leads me to the thing that I noticed that you said in your form that I really want to hone in on and ask you about. You said, to me, I've always made the sensible choices in life, but to others, my life seems to have been chaotic and risky. And I love that, because that's how I feel, right? The piece of everybody else being like, you're so brave, you're so courageous, you always make the really bold choices, or, you know, those kind of things. Whereas to me, I'm like, no, I made the obvious choice, or the sensible choice, or, you know, the most self-backed choice, or whatever it was. So I just wanted to ask you about that a little bit.
I'm so glad. Well, thank you first for that lovely story about your father and the boundaries and how he negotiated. That's a great lesson for any parent. And I was like making notes that is definitely what I'm going to do as well. So thank you for that. And the part about, you know, I always made the choices that I felt were the clearest, obvious, most sensible choices, but everyone else thought, oh my goodness. And it comes down to for me, it was always about, well, what would happen if I did not make this choice? You know, how much more painful. And some of the choices I've made have not been easy. I'll say that, but they're still the right choices, because the not making that choice and just sticking with the status quo, just like carrying on in a job that I hated or a relationship that I didn't like, I knew would end up into way more pain, way more difficulty, way more challenging. So you make the choice that is right, because that is the path of least resistance for me. And that has happened many times. I have left at least 3 very well-paying careers because the pain of staying in that place compared to the relatively familiar pain of not being sure what was going to happen, or, you know, not knowing where I was going to be earning my next paycheck, or even where I'd be living, or even which country I would be in, was so much more attractive to me. So much more attractive to me. And that's it really. And everyone has the ability to look into the future, to think, what will happen if I do this, or if I do not do this? And so what becomes for some people a scary choice, actually, it's more scary not making a choice and just staying where you are. If there's a challenge, if there's something that's bothering you, not choosing to engage with it is going to be way, way worse. And that's why I wrote what I did, because I think that is a lesson that most people can benefit from. The consequence of not making a choice and not exercising your own freedom, I think, you know, is something that we all need to be more aware of. Does that answer? And I can give examples of choices if that would help.
No, for me, it's really, I mean, we're in the same mindset around it. And for me, it's actually the logical choice. And for someone who has always considered themselves to be a heart on the sleeve, emotionally led, volatile hormone woman, and getting my autism diagnosis last year, ADHD and autism, helps me to see that actually there are some situations where where one might say I'm really autistic, and for me, decision making is one of those things, right? Like it's like one of those diagrams, those infographics where it's like, if this then that, it's like this way yes, this way no, and you choose and you get to an answer, right? And for me, that's kind of how I make decisions. It's like yes or no, yes or no, yes, right? And you end up at a situation, so it's very much logic based. What I hear from clients and friends who I say something like, inaction is an action in itself too, their kind of comeback, their view of the world is that they don't have as much self-assurance, self-reliance, self-confidence as I do. Like they don't back themselves, and that they feel that it's easier to, or that they must sacrifice themselves, or that they don't really matter, and as long as the other person is happy, or those kind of things. And I don't know whether I've always been someone who's backed themselves, or whether actually, even the flip side of that, I'm like, okay, well, I've always backed myself because I kind of learned that the only person you can rely on is yourself. That's the other end of that spectrum,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that's one of the hardest things as a teacher, that we have to learn, that to let people make their own mistakes and make their own choices. And it's very empowering for the teacher as well, when you empower your clients or your students or your colleagues, however you call them, to be able to make that choice. And it's tough when people are not able to do that. I was thinking about this as you were speaking, and how do we do that as teachers? How do we do that? And the answer kind of really rose in my chest. Well, exercising the choice and the freedom that we are giving is very much like exercising a muscle. It's something that you need practice with in small ways. And like everything as a teacher, if you can help people through that process of making choices in small ways, or making an environment where they feel comfortable in exercising their freedom, and they get used to it, and they start doing that in other aspects of their life, then they will start to light up, and then they will start to reason. This amazing gift that we have, that we can choose how we show up, who we are, what we do, all of those things. So, and that is really our role as teachers, I think, to empower people to experience that, to taste it in ways that they hadn't before. And so then they get to show up in other ways of their life as well.
100%. And I also, to kind of link it around full circle, one of the things you said was you had parents who encouraged you to be you, and who encouraged your freedom. And I, as I said, my dad did that for me too. And I think that it's not just a really important part of being a teacher, but it's a really important part of being a parent, is that piece of giving your children the responsibility of choice in all the little ways as early as you can, so that they do back themselves, because that's what the outcome of that is, right? It's like if we don't give them choice, if we do everything for them, then they only get that opportunity to fail when the stakes are much higher. The opportunity to fail at 17, 20, 25, 30, is much higher than it is when you're 3 or 5 or 7. And so if you're getting people to, fail forward, or like make bad choices young, then this, like I said, the stakes are much less high, and they build confidence in themselves.
Absolutely, 100%. And I love the way that you phrase that. Actually, the stakes are higher when we're older. And it's also, and just thinking back to what my parents did, it's not actually what they did, it's what they didn't do. And this is one of the things that I've noticed with other people that I know whose parents raised them differently. And what I've noticed as a teacher, when you're in a position of authority, the words that you say to them have a huge impact, especially if they are critical, especially if they are shaming, especially if they are singling people out. The inner critic that we will have is so powerful. At least 10 times as powerful for that inner cheerleader that we have. And the voices that we use to those who we are responsible for, the voices that we use will go internal in them. So I never shame my children, and it makes me emotional thinking about that. I never criticize my students, even if they're making poor choices, even if they're not doing things very well. There is always something to build them up, because anything negative that you say will sit inside of them. This is a long period that we're in this world for. People do not need that voice in themselves to be amplified by someone they love and respect. We need to hold people in tenderness and love and support and cheerlead as much as we possibly can.
Yeah, I feel like the role as a teacher, the role as a parent, and staying in that love, staying in that championing, becomes particularly difficult when it is revealing the conditioning and the spaces and the voices that we where it's a reaction, right? And I was talking today with a client who was saying exactly that, came to me saying, there's a couple of situations in my life at the moment where I am reacting or criticizing both my partner and my mum. And I want to stop doing that, because I need to stop doing it so that I'm not doing it around my daughter, and I want to stop doing it around everybody. But help me put some space in here so I can, so that I can, exactly, like you do with breathing space, right? Let's breathe into it. Let's create some space, because clearly there's something happening in this scenario that is having her react rather than respond. And so it's this dual thing of continuing to work on ourselves, continuing to find scenarios and situations where our inner critic is present in something someone else is doing, and then not passing that on. For me, that feels like a big, even though I'm not a parent, it's still a big part of my journey in life right now.
Ebony, I'm going to get on my soapbox here because I am so passionate about this, and it moves me so much. I often get asked, why do I do what I do? Why do people come and learn from you, or go on this self-development journey, or this inner spiritual journey? Well, first of all, we might do it because we are unhappy, we are unsatisfied with who we are, and we want to be better. We may do it because we want to make the world a better place. That when we show up for ourselves, actually, it will ripple out and people will feel it. If we can model what it looks like, then that gives permission to other people as well. But for the first time, probably in history, ever, that we have enough knowledge now and enough experience of ancestral trauma, of generational trauma, that we can stop the mistakes that our parents, that the wounds that they were given when they were young and that they have repeated, going back for, centuries probably. We have the opportunity now to stop it by committing to our own journey of self-development, of healing, of lighting up the world. Actually, we are not just doing this for ourselves. We are not doing it for everyone current in the world to make the world a better place. We are doing it for the future, for the people who are yet to come, not just our children's, but our children's and generations to come. This healing that we all need to have to stop the inner critic. What would the world be like if none of us had this voice saying, you're not enough, you're not good enough, you're not loved? What would that be like? We have an opportunity now in this moment to stop it. And this, if you're listening to this, please, carry whatever your path looks like, of self-development, of growth, of lighting up the world, of healing, however you want to call it, whether it's working with Ebony and you cannot get a wiser teacher than that, or if it's something completely different, please stay committed, because you will make a difference, not just in the world now, but in the world to come.
Yeah, I really feel that. I'm really with
Thank
you.
you.
I had a beautiful conversation. I have lots of very beautiful conversations with my dad. Recently we were talking about time and the passing of time. And, he's a very wise spiritual man. And we were talking about how time there is no time. Like, it is an illusion. It is this, non-linear thing, and this might be a bit much for a lot of people. And for me, what it really, I hear people say, we're healing for 7 generations in the future, and by doing so, we heal for 7 generations in the past. And for me, that is that piece of there is no time, right? Like, so for every element, there is consequential time that we exist in. And at the same time, every time we do this healing piece, we're healing, like, not just in front and behind us, but like everywhere. And that shifts the timelines, and that changes everything. And we cannot even really imagine, because you said, can you imagine what it would be like if we didn't have an inner critic? And part of me is like, no, I can't, because that's my whole reality, right? And it would take quite a lot for me to actually sit there and like really imagine, what would it be like? What would the world look like if there were no inner critics in every single human? That would have a ripple. That would fundamentally change relationship. It would fundamentally change work. It would change everything. It would change how we lived. It would change what we would do with our possessions, with our money, with our resources. Like, I don't know that I can imagine it, but I wanna, right? Like, it's exciting.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I can't imagine what it would be like. And the inner critic is just one, one voice that we have in the, in the crazy, fucked up FM in our heads. There are so many others. So yeah, I can't imagine either, but I would love to find out.
I would. And I love that this elevation, this humor, this little lightness has popped in, because I think that's part of the joy of being able to shift perspective, right? Like, not only have we got choice, one of the choices that we have is this ability to shape shift and to change perspective, to imagine what if, to play with it. And we become cleverer, like our IQ increases when we move into neutral or joy, right? Like when we move into playfulness. And one of our mutual friends is a master jester, I would say. And Jamie's been on the podcast, and Jamie Cato has that ability. And I think both you and I also, whilst perhaps more serious in some ways, I don't know, have this ability to use range and perspective and play a little. And I think often people think that healing or this personal development journey has to be heavy and hard. Yeah.
Well, it's much more fun if you dance, if you think about it as dance or play, rather than this kind of striving or work that we have to like. No, I'm not into that. I want to have fun. I want to enjoy every step of the way, and lighting up the world should be something joyful. As we let go of all the shit and all the armor and the masks that we are, actually, it's the most amazing thing, like discovering you have wings and you can fly, or you can breathe underwater, or you can speak a different language. It is the most astonishing thing to do, the most life-affirming, the most magnificent thing that we can do with our lives.
Oh, it really, really is. And I feel like that is a wonderful point to begin to wrap this conversation up. I have also made an executive decision, because in the Patron part of the podcast this week, rather than us doing one more thing, I recorded a little while ago, or we recorded, and recorded a series on facilitation, and all sorts of different people came in and spoke about how to be a master facilitator, or like what is involved in really good facilitation. And one of those people was you. And so for the Patron part of the podcast, this means that you can get back to your kids, and I can end my day. And we have already done the work. So our past, we can thank our past selves for doing the timeline piece for us here. But so I will pop that in as the Patron part of the podcast this week, because it was such a good conversation, and you really went into the masculine and the feminine, the dynamics, and the creating a container so that freedom can happen. And I really love the way that you use words and language and structure and metaphor in that. So if that's okay with you, that's what we're going to do for the Patron part.
Ebony, can I suggest something else?
Yeah, go on.
I am going to give your listeners something extra as well, which you can include in the Patron part of the podcast. So I'm a breathwork facilitator and teacher and trainer, and I use conscious breathwork to help people receive what they need. And if you haven't come across breathwork before, it's the most astonishing transformational practice that is not only instantly accessible to everyone, but it's just about free as well. I won't go and talk about that now, but I'm going to give you an exclusive recording of a conscious breathwork journey that you can put in that part where people can have access to, and it is called The Dance Between Bliss and Joy. It is a session that I recorded just a couple of weeks ago, and I think it's very relevant here about bringing that lightness and that dance in, and that grounding and that joy of being alive, and yet also being aware that we are on a transcendental journey as well, to a great blissful place of spiritual equanimity and peace and wisdom as well. So if that would be something that was used, I would love to generously give that to all your patron people as well.
That is beautiful, perfect, and incredibly generous. Thank you. And so now they get both of those treats and they can go and play. In the show notes, I will put all of your links, but let us know where is the best place to come and find out more about you and more about the breathing space.
You can find me on my Facebook page, on my TikTok page, on my Instagram page. Benedict Beaumont, if you search that, you'll find me everywhere. But if you are interested in breathwork and working with me and discovering what your breath could do for you, have a look at our school website, which is makesomebreathingspace.com. Makesomebreathingspace.com. We can cater to people who just want to test their foot in the water with some free sessions to go a little bit deeper, maybe even train to become a facilitator like I am and do what I do.
I speak with a lot of body workers, facilitators, breathwork practitioners, in my work. And people often say to me, which training do you recommend? And I always say yours and this one. So if you're listening and you are in that space of wanting to be a facilitator, it really is. I've had the privilege of coming in and doing a training session and finding out a little bit about what goes on in there, and it has depth and breadth like none of the others. So I'm really, really grateful for you, genuinely. Thanks for coming and having this conversation and for just being you.
Well, Ebony, thank you so much. Perhaps we could close like we started, just by taking a couple of breaths together.
Sure.
Thank you.